What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Tuesday, June 30th, 2020, the last day of the month here. Tomorrow's July 1st, heading down to Independence Day this weekend, and all kinds of fireworks and barbecues and all kinds of things like that, assuming it's not raining, which we're under a lot of rain here right now. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about today. As usual, we're going to talk about news until I run out of news. Then we're going to open the phones and have you come on in with your opinions, observations, points of view, whatever, what have you here. All day long, the corporate media and the political insiders have been talking about this story that came out in the New York Times last Friday about how Russia was offering bounties to the Taliban to kill U.S. troops. Now, the White House is saying it was never vetted. Nobody could confirm it. But what really makes me suspicious about this whole story is the way that all of Trump's opponents are treating it as if it's beyond question. You shouldn't question it. It's absolutely true. It is just as solid as, Saddam's nuclear weapons. And so it reads to me like this is another effort to mess up Donald Trump going into the election here. Along with the fact that it's meant to derail the U.S. military pullout from Afghanistan. Now, remember, yesterday when I started the show, I started out saying, I think we're losing these wars. And that's why the corporate media is out there, pushing COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff at us to keep us distracted. The way they distracted us from the fact that we were losing in Vietnam for all those years. And I think I'm really starting to think that's what's going on here, because you don't hear about Syria and Afghanistan much anymore. What you do hear about, of course, is the new demons, Russia and China. Russia's bad, Russia's bad, Russia's bad. This is, the latest chapter in Russiagate is what this is. And then there's China's bad, China's bad. I'm getting a bad feeling this is all not working out very well. All righty, so according to Moscow Special Envoy to Afghanistan, this is an obvious lie, and it is there to derail the U.S. pullout from Afghanistan. Okay, now, we've been talking about all these statues that are being pulled down. We're talking about all these monuments that are being pulled down, names being changed. Democrats want John Wayne's airport name changed. They want it to go back to the original name, which was the Orange County Airport. Ooh, that's inspiring here. And they say because the iconic actor held white supremacist, anti-LGBT and anti-indigenous views here. Now, Trump is defending John Wayne after Democrats call for his name for saying, quote, I believe in white supremacy, end quote. This was supposedly in a 1971 interview in Playboy magazine. So I did something that a lot of our corporate media don't bother doing. I hunted down the original interview to see what I was saying here. This is where that line comes from about white supremacy. With a lot of blacks, there's quite a bit of resentment along with their descent, and possibly rightfully so. But we can't all of a sudden get down on our knees and turn everything over to the leadership of the blacks. I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. That's the whole sentence from which they clipped out the one part they wanted. Wayne went on to say, I don't believe in giving authority in positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people. And the Playboy interviewer was definitely pushing on him to try and say something a little bit more here. And he basically, John Wayne says, the problem is we can't push the blacks along if they don't have the basic skills. And they've got to get the education to have the same skills as everybody else if they expect the same outcome here. And he went on to remind everybody that he directed 2 motion pictures, Green Beret and the Alamo, and he had the correct number of blacks in the Green Berets. He had a black slave who's based on a real historical character in the Alamo. He says, but I don't go looking for positions just to say I need to put a black person in here. So Playboy finally ended up saying, can blacks be integrated into the film industry if they're denied training and education? Wayne said, it's just as hard for a white man to get a card in the Hollywood craft unions, and I can tell you from personal experience, he was absolutely correct. There's no royal road to getting in the unions unless your family's been in the unions for a long time. Now, here's a good example, a counterexample of what Wayne was talking about. UCLA students are basically demanding that one of their professors postpone examinations as a show of solidarity with people of color and then give automatic passing grades to all blacks. Now, it sounds good. And for those black students who weren't very studious, you know, it's definitely a positive thing here. But it illustrates John Wayne's point that a lot of times you're dealing with, you know, people of color, whether it's black or Hispanic, who don't have the background and training to be moving into these positions through the choices they themselves had made in their life. And the obvious example is to look at people like Booker T. Washington, Carver, Bill Cosby, despite recent events, who went out and made something of themselves. And I'm sure that they would rather be known for having accomplished something than simply saying, oh, well, they were put in that position because they were black. They needed a black hire for the quota system. So out at UCLA, they no longer want to give away the grades based on academic performance, but based on your skin color. What was it that Martin Luther King said about skin color? I have a dream that people are judged by their character. Well, we need to keep that going here. All righty. There is a new social media app called Parler, P-A-R-L-E-R, and apparently it is promising censorship-free communication. And apparently Trump and his supporters are switching on over to it, and it's taking off. It's been on kind of the fringes of social media for a while, and now all of a sudden it's the hottest thing since Twitter. And you may have some trouble signing up for it. I did. There's still some problems with the code here. But once I can get on in, yeah, I'm going to switch over to that. I'm going to switch over to any media that is not controlling my words. Absolutely here. All right. Joe Biden is hiding in his basement still. Actually, he came out for a press conference today, and he didn't do too bad. He didn't do too bad. He didn't have any of the real whoppers that people are looking for. But Obama is basically admitting it, that the riots and protests that we're seeing in the streets of America are designed to get Joe Biden elected. Because everything that's happening, the statues that are coming down and the defacing of monuments and everything, it's all somehow Donald Trump's fault. So, what a mess this is. Anyway, over in New York City in Washington Square Park, the famed George Washington statues have been doused with red paint. Part of the iconic arch in Greenwich Village's Washington Square Park. I've seen that arch. I mean, up close and personal. All righty. The news has been filled with reports about Black Lives Matter supporters vandalizing and tearing down statues of slave traders, slave owners, and anyone who they perceive as having historically been involved with slavery. Now, in Bristol, England, a statue of the slave trader Edward Colston was pulled down and thrown into the harbor. In Belgium, statues of King Leopold were defaced. Now, the actions have caused some local authorities to consider whether all statues perceived as offending current sensibilities should be removed. There is a problem with that. We live in a culture where everybody strives to be offended. You can't please everybody. No matter what you do, somebody somewhere is not going to like it. And if you start tearing down our civilization because somebody 5,000 miles away finds it offensive, we won't have a civilization. I have a question for all of you. Right now, the big issue, of course, is, slavery this and slavery that. And we've been talking about how the founding fathers and various others throughout history who seem to be moral, intelligent, altruistic human beings could go along with slavery. What induced them to think slavery was okay? Well, that's something that you tend to think about when you look at the monuments of them. You look up there and you see this person like Thomas Jefferson. And, you remember that he wrote the Declaration of Independence, and he had input into the Constitution. He was one of the presidents of the early United States of America. but he also owned slaves. Apparently, he took good care of them too, but he owned slaves. So you stand there thinking, how could he go along with that? Of course, you're automatically judging him by the sensibilities of today. If you tear that statue down, people won't think about that anymore. And that means it could happen all over again. Those monuments are not honoring everything these people did. These monuments serve as warnings to not make the same mistakes they did. So that's something to think about a little bit, I imagine. All right, apparently over in St. Louis, protesters are clashing with Catholics in a fight to tear down the statue of the city's namesake. Now, St. Louis was king of France from 1226 to 70, and he partook in the 7th and 8th Crusades. He restricted usury, yay, Louis, and established hospitals and personally cared for the poor and lepers. He was canonized in 1297. But for some reason, the protesters are saying he has to come down. And it's remarkable how quickly left-wingers will judge figures from hundreds of years ago while refusing to look at the crimes taking place today. Leftists endorse everything from the mass genocide of abortion to infanticide and euthanasia. Yet they look back 800 years to judge King Louis, a man who reformed a medieval European justice system into one that is not all that far from our modern version. So the progressive has turned original sin, which afflicts all mankind, into a political error, which conveniently afflicts his opponents and not himself. That's one of the things that I find most offensive about this movement, is ignoring things that you could actually do something about today in order to cast aspersions and judgment on people who are dead and really are not in a position to understand that their memories are being defaced. All right. Over at St. Albans Cathedral, they're putting a painting of the Last Supper above its altar in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. It portrays Jesus as being black. And the church is being urged to rethink portraying Christ as white. Well, I've got this really kind of like crazy idea, is that we find out what color he really was, and that's how he's portrayed. Whatever happened to the idea of art being realistic representations of what's going on? And I realize the advent of photography completely destroyed that ambition for artists. But saying Jesus was black is not going to make him black. Saying he was white will not make him white. It just doesn't work that way. Apparently, York Minster's statue of the Roman Emperor Constantine may be torn down over allegations that he supported slavery. Now remember, Constantine was the Roman emperor who brought Christianity to Rome. And you'd think the Christians would be very happy with him, but no, he supported slavery. Okay, why? Well, it was the custom. It was the custom. Greece had slavery. We like to think of our democracy as having been based on Greek principles. Greece had slaves. If you look at the history of mankind, there's always been slavery, and it's not just the blacks. Whites have been enslaved. Indentured servants is another name for slave. 1040 EZ is another name for being a slave. All kinds of slavery. And all those monuments are coming down, with one notable exception. There were Jewish slave traders and slave owners, and they have monuments, and so far, none have been touched. Now, I find that to be an interesting omission by the Black Lives Matter people. All righty, Joe Biden is out there. As I said before, he had a press conference early today, and he came across okay. He came across okay. But he made this comment about how H-1B foreign workers built this country. Well, no, Joe. The H-1B visa is a rather recent creation, and this country was built a long time ago, 200 years, longer before it was a country. And it was built by people who moved here and became citizens, not foreign workers. Now, yes, during the Great Railroad expansion, they imported a lot of Chinese labor, but they didn't have H-1B visas, and most of them wound up staying in the United States. According to polls, nearly 40% of voters think Biden has dementia, and the latest online survey found that 38% of likely U.S. voters think Biden is suffering some form of dementia, 48% disagree, 14% are not sure. Those are really, really bad numbers for somebody running for president here. All righty. Now, we're anticipating soon the release of the Durham report. And the Democrats are trying to get ahead of it by smearing and discrediting Attorney General Barr. So there must be something really bad in there that they don't want you to know about here. All righty. Sometimes listening to the morning news is a bit like entering into an alternate universe. Last Wednesday, the primary elections were held in New York State. CBS News reported that New York Congressman Eliot Engel was, quote, facing a challenge, end quote, from Democratic Party challenger Jamal Bowman. Now, Eliot Engel is an Israel firster, hardcore. It turns out Bowman had beaten Engel by a margin of 60.9% versus 35.6%. However, the Times felt compelled to describe it as a stiff challenge. He lost. It's not a stiff challenge. He lost. Article out of Russia Today. Free speech in the U.S. is as illusory as free-range eggs. Neither exists. And it starts out with something that we've all come to recognize ourselves. America is as authoritarian and intolerant of dissent as any tin pot dictatorship. It generally just goes about quashing it in a subtler, more sophisticated way. These days, they don't even bother hiding it anymore. They've got social media under control. 99% of online discussions are going through Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and are being heavily, heavily filtered, usually against conservatives here. So, yeah, we don't really have free speech here anymore. The attitude seems to be, well, you've got a right to free speech, but we hope you have the responsibility not to actually use it. Okay. YouTube has just banned Richard Spencer, Stefan Molyneux, and others as white supremacists as part of a crackdown. And Molyneux has released a video statement on Twitter asking his fans to stay in the conversation while bemoaning the loss of thousands of hours of work, which was destroyed along with his YouTube archives. Well, maybe you want to keep backups of all of that stuff. I mean, I haven't put a lot on YouTube, mostly Claire's music and so forth. But, you know, what we have copies locally as well here. Okay. Department of Justice is moving forward in stripping big tech of the Section 230 protections. These are the protections that say social media is not a publisher and therefore First Amendment doesn't apply and you can't sue them. That was one of the biggest wins of social media in Congress, but now that's going to be taken away. And it means that if you are targeted by big media, if you're censored, if you're blocked, there will be legal recourse. Okay? That will be a good thing. Forbes censors award-winning environmentalist apology over 3-decade climate scare. And this has to do with activist Michael Schellenberger, who has apparently seen the light, as it were, and decided that he wanted to apologize to the world for the climate scare that's created over the last 30 years. I was telling you, yeah. ClimateGate was a hoax. Human-caused global warming was a hoax. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And so we're talking about Forbes. We're talking about Michael Schellenberger, who has been a progressive. He was named one of Time's Heroes of the Environment, while his book Breakthrough was heralded by Wired as potentially the best thing to happen to environmentalism since Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. Now, his book, Apocalypse Never, was widely praised as an eye-opening, fact-based approach to climate science and engaging in well-researched. Now, he's apologizing. He says, we were all wrong, and they were. And so Forbes is now blocking his article. Well, because Forbes, along with the rest of the corporate media, they went right along with this whole ClimateGate scare. Human-caused global warming. It's all your fault. You must give up your high lifestyle to lower carbon dioxide. How about planting more plants to eat that carbon dioxide? What are you, some kind of a radical? Dangerous? All right, let's talk about COVID-19. The distractor du jour, as it were. Lockdowns are back in some states. Apparently, I think it's like 12 states now have sort of backed off their relaxation, and they're locking down yet again for what's called the second wave of the pandemic. And I think it was a bad move. They've handled this very, very badly. I think this idea of lockdown, 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 yes, we're going along with it, the lockdown, and then we're going to start relaxing. Oh, good, we can get back to normal. We start getting back to normal, and all of a sudden they say, nope, got to lock down again. That's going to anger a lot of people. The governor of Arizona has ordered bars, gyms, water parks, and theaters to close for at least 30 days to curb the spread of COVID-19. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey on Monday ordered all of these closures for 30 days to stop the spread of coronavirus. Now, here's where I'm starting to scratch my head and say, what's going on here? Because I think the scare factor for the original COVID-19 has kind of worn off. You know, people are just saying, yeah, okay, it's just not there, the scare factor. So they've come up with a new one. Okay, they're saying there's a new strain of COVID-19. It's a mutated form, and it's 10 times more infectious because its viral spike proteins don't break as easily in the body. Booga, 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 booga. Be afraid. Be afraid. The World Health Organization warns the worst is yet to come as coronavirus global death toll climbs past 500,000 people on a planet with 4.5 billion human beings. Another warning to prepare for food shortages. Meat processing plants are hotspots for COVID-19. Ron Paul is out there saying the media is lying about the second wave. This is a man you should listen to. Now, for months, the Washington Post and the rest of the corporate media kept a morbid COVID-19 death count on their front pages and at the top of all news broadcasts. The coronavirus outbreak was always about the number of dead. The narrative was intended to boost governors like Cuomo in New York and Whitmer in Michigan, who turned their states authoritarian under the false notion that destroying people's jobs, freedom, and lives would somehow keep a virus from doing what viruses always do, spread through a population until eventually losing strength and dying out. The death count was always the headline. And here's where it gets a little bit more interesting, because according to this article that came out of Blacklisted News, tens of thousands of coronavirus tests have been double counted, according to officials. This was over in England. And this is where they're getting the high numbers. They're counting the tests over and over and over again. More than 1,000 inmates at California's San Quentin prison now have coronavirus. More than a third of the entire facility's population are now ill. The number jumped from 823 on Sunday to 1,015 on Monday, a 22% increase. There have been 973 new cases in the prison in the last 14 days. The prison has by far the highest number of cases out of all of California's correctional facilities. Now, as if all of that wasn't scary enough, they've come up with a new one. There's a new strain of swine flu, G4EA-H1N1, discovered in China. Oh my goodness. It has the potential to spread to humans and cause another pandemic. And experts from the Chinese Academy of Sciences say pigs are a key intermediate host or mixing vessel for viruses spreading from wild animals into humans. That part is definitely true. That is definitely true. A lot of these new viruses coming out are recombinants. Back in 2009, when we were dealing with that flu, I used to call it the when pigs fly flu, because it was a flu virus made out of human, porcine, and avian DNA, when pigs fly. So they've got a new one out there to wave at us, to wag at us. Wag the virus. There's an idea for a movie here. Okay, let's talk about the economic news now. We have long advocated here at RBN the ownership and possession of precious metals. We have also advocated being very careful who you are doing business with. And apparently there is a new scandal in China involving 83 tons of fake gold bars. These are bars that are actually minted out of copper and then plated with gold. And apparently these bars have been pledged as loan collateral, and they're rehypothecated, meaning multiple creditors have claims on this material. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show. Here we're going to talk about the international news now for a little bit. Brussels has summoned Venezuela's ambassador to the EU after Maduro expels the bloc's envoy. Apparently, Monday, Caracas ordered European Union Ambassador to Venezuela, Isabel Brilhante Pedrosa, to leave the country within 72 hours, with the move coming hours after Brussels slapped sanctions on 11 Venezuelan officials. Now, the EU will summon Venezuela's ambassador to the bloc in protest at President Maduro's decision to expel Brussels' top diplomat to the Latin American nation. We're going to summon Maduro's ambassador to the European institutions today, and from there, we'll see what measures will be taken. Okay, Chinese President Xi Jinping has signed the national security law for Hong Kong, and this is the law that is going to bring Hong Kong supposedly more in line with mainland China. The people of Hong Kong are not at all happy about it. And of course, the status of Hong Kong has been kind of fuzzy ever since the British lease expired, with Hong Kong taking the attitude they're an autonomous region and Beijing saying, no, you're still part of our country here. Over in Kashmir, the Muslims are concerned about moves by the Indian population to try and bring about a demographic shift. And social media platforms are filled with angry posts from people who got their newly issued domicile resident certificates. And many in the Muslim majority Kashmir believe India has a larger scheme to change the demography of the region. Up to 25,000 people have been granted domicile certificates in Indian-controlled Kashmir since May. The certificate is equal to citizenship. It entitles a person to residency and jobs in the region, which until last year was only reserved for the local population. All right, story that's coming on out of Press TV. The U.S. and its allies are the ones leading an arms race in the Middle East, not Iran. Kevin Barrett, author, journalist, radio host with a PhD in Islamic and Arabic Studies, made the remarks in an interview with Press TV Monday after U.S. Special Representative for Iran Brian Hook said that lifting the arms embargo on Iran will trigger an arms race in the Middle East. Speaking at a joint news conference with Saudi Minister of State for Foreign Affairs Adel Al-Jubeir in Riyadh on Monday, Hook said lifting the ban would only embolden Iran and destabilize the region. That's not an outcome that the UN Security Council can accept. The Council's mandate is clear: to maintain international peace and security, as long as everybody does what the United States tells them to do here. Over in Yemen, and my hat is off to those people of Yemen who have withstood this Saudi proxy war for all this time here. But apparently the Yemeni forces have scored a major territorial gain in Bada and Marib provinces. And the spokesman for the Yemeni armed forces say the country's troops, supported by allied fighters from popular committees, have managed to wrest control over large swaths of land in the central provinces of al-Baida and Marib, following fierce clashes with Saudi-sponsored militiamen loyal to former President Abd Rabbu Mansur Hadi. Now, speaking at a press conference in the Yemeni capital city of Sana'a on Monday, Brigadier General Yahi Sari highlighted that 400 square kilometers of land in the two provinces had been liberated during the operation. All righty. Tomorrow is the day when something is supposed to happen over in Israel and Palestine and the West Bank. And apparently there's an expectation there will be protests condemning the Israeli plan to annex parts of the West Bank. And they're set to take place in the U.S. and Europe on the same day Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to begin the process, which is tomorrow. The demonstrations will be held in Chicago, San Diego, Brooklyn, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Other Western cities will also witness similar protests, including Toronto, Madrid, and Valencia. Students for Justice in Palestine, the Jewish Voice for Peace, and American Muslims for Palestine are among the pro-Palestinian groups organizing the protests. The Samadoun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, one of the organizers, urged direct actions and popular mobilizations in Palestinian refugee camps, cities, and villages, and professed loyalty to the martyrs in its call for the events. So Israel's going to grab a big chunk of somebody else's land again. And here's an article that I just found very, very difficult to believe here. Well, it's not that difficult to believe, but I find it rather shocking. This came out of the Times of Israel. Apparently, the United States Supreme Court released a decision yesterday in a case about NGOs, HIV/AIDS funding, and prostitution that would force U.S. aid recipients to comply with American policy on Israel. In other words, if you want the money, you agree with everything we say about Israel. Foreign nonprofits must hew to U.S. government dictates to receive the money, the High Court ruled. Now, technically, the Supreme Court does not have jurisdiction outside the United States of America. But it's basically, they said, it's legal for us to withhold all that money we promised them unless they do what we tell them, which, of course, is always the string attached to any U.S. funding. I would not be surprised if some of these NGOs just told the United States to go jump in the creek, that they'll make do without the money. Netanyahu, meanwhile, is warning Bashar al-Assad not to ally with Iran's Ayatollahs and drops hints that Israeli ops in Syria will continue. And let's see, flash flood watch has been extended. Ooh, thrills. U.S.-Iran confrontation in Lebanon, countermeasures and escalation. It's just going to take one spark for that entire region to just really blow up here. All right, it's looking like a long, hot summer as tensions increase between Washington and Tehran, U.S. elections approach, and the maximum pressure exercised by the U.S. escalates. After Syria, it's Lebanon's turn. The country's financial failure has reached the point of no return. All righty. The Golden State Killer, as expected, went into court today and pled guilty to 13 murders and another 13 kidnappings. I remember when he was at large, and just everybody was scared of, who was this guy? And they finally caught him, and he will be, of course, spending the rest of his life in jail. So let's do a couple of little first of all, we're going to open the phone lines now. If you want to call, just call on in. A couple of science stories here. Claire got really excited about this one. It's raining gems. They have confirmed scientifically that, believe it or not, diamond dust falls out of the sky on Neptune and Uranus, and they finally figured out what's going on with the atmosphere and how the physics are working. And Neptune and Uranus are called ice giants, but ice here refers to a hot, slushy fluid of materials like water, ammonia, and methane over an Earth-sized rocky core, and below lighter gases like hydrogen and helium. And I would speculate that what's going on is that they've got all this methane with all this carbon, and as it descends lower into the atmosphere, it comes under enough pressure to metal bond, which is basically what a diamond is metal bonded carbon. Well, I had to tell Claire, no, our Hyundai won't reach Uranus and Neptune. She was very, very disappointed here. Okay, gamma ray explosion on the surface of a hot dead star captured by radio telescopes. This appears to be a rather rare occurrence called a symbiotic nova, which happens with double star systems with a red giant star emitting material towards a white dwarf, a process which eventually leads to a bright outburst as the red giant is no longer able to hold itself together. And they're considered quite rare and exceptional. Now, the problem with the gamma ray burst, of course, is that it's lethal to star systems around it. And it was rather interesting. We were watching this program on the Science Channel last night about Earth's voyage through space, talking about, well, you've got the Earth's rotation, then you've got precession, then you've got the changing orbit around the sun, which leads to the ice ages. Then you've got the sun traveling through the Milky Way, dragging the solar system with it. Other galaxies coming in to hit the Milky Way, and just, where are we ultimately going to wind up here? And they were talking about the fact that there seems to be some evidence there was a nearby gamma ray burst very early in the lifespan of planet Earth, which resulted in the near extinction of all life on Earth. You'd have to be pretty deep in the ocean for those gamma rays not to get you. All righty, let's take a look here. Rush Limbaugh's out there with a comment about Joe Biden saying Biden doesn't have anything. The only thing Biden has going for him is he's not Trump. Okay, we're going to grab a phone call now from Arjun in New Jersey. Hello, Arjun. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. And you were mentioning Biden. Like I will talk about like wars of China, but
yes.
You were mentioning that Biden was saying that H-1B guys, like they built it up the country. It could be just because they can grab like the Indian votes, but that's just my perspective. Wars of China, Sun Tzu wrote like this book, like Art of War. We all know this. Now the thing is that like he writes in this book that to fight and conquer all in your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
Yes.
So the thing is that like in China acquired nuclear weapon, did nuclear test in 1964, and it attacked Russia. Like it had like disputes. So China has boundaries with close to 13 countries, and it has land disputes with 23 nations currently. In 1968, it went ahead and like it attacked Russia, and like Russia's killed like 800 Chinese. Russians, like around 64 of these Russian guys died. And then after that, there were no problems between Russia and China. So they were like really good. They are really good neighbors, and China doesn't bother with Russia anymore. Now there used to be a country called Tibet. It used to be like it is in China right now, but in 1950s and 1960s, Dalai Lama actually moved from Tibet, and he actually took like refuge in India. And so what they did, like they took all the people who were in Tibet and moved them in the China's mainland, and brought the people from China into Tibet, so nobody can actually produce any revolution. Then what happened, like recently China has built a CPEC, which is called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor.
Yeah.
And now Pakistan doesn't have any money, so it cannot, it cannot pay even the interest, let alone the principal. And even for the interest, it asks more money for China, and so that's why what they do is like they will actually target the poor countries, and they will give them so much of debt, and the thing is that like then they will use their military bases. Similar thing they have done with Sri Lanka also, one of the Navy port in Sri Lanka. Now they paid like $70,000 every day to the Prime Minister of Nepal. His name is Oli. And he bought, and they have bought like all the politicians there. So right now what they do, and they show that like Himalaya is in China right now. And what they do is like they go into the villages of these Nepal, and they will just stand on the top of the jeep that they come with, and they will say you are all like Chinese citizens right now, and they will take the whole village like that. Now the thing is that like there are 5 to 6 future wars of China. One is unification of Taiwan, which is between 2020 and 2025. That's their objective. Then there is reconquest of southern Tibet, which is 2035 to 2040. Reconquest of Spratly Island, which is 2025 to 2030. Reconquest of Diaoyu Islands. These are actually Senkaku Islands, which are actually in Japan. Now, China says that these islands are actually mine, but it is Japan's, like it is actually Japan's island, but they say that they will conquer it in 2040 to 2045. Now, unification of Outer Mongolia 2045 to 2050, and taking back the land lost to Russia 2055 to 2060. Now, I think they are putting like Russia in the end, because I think like Russia is a superpower and they will kick their ass really good, and they are thinking that Russia might collapse by the end. So the thing is that like what I want to say is that everything is not U.S. government's fault. What we are not seeing is China cannot fight conventional war with US or any other nuclear power nation. It is ingrained in Chinese to take the land without even fighting a bullet. And I think that's why, and it's just my perspective, that's why they released the coronavirus, destabilize everyone, and so that they can take the South China Sea. Now, even right now, even a lot of US Navy ships are there in South China Sea. So that's why it could be very much possible that statues are getting destroyed. It could be that China is actually funding these riots. And I also want to say that San Suu also, and just one last statement, San Suu also writes that appear weak when you are strong and strong when you are weak. I think China is quite weak right now. It has opened the war currently to many different nations, and that's all I have to say today.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the information. We're going to let you go here and switch over to Terry in California. Hello, Terry. I may have to take you through the ad break. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, they talk about the Russians paying the Afghans for killing American troops. Well, how about when the situation was reversed and the Russians were in Afghanistan? We not only paid the troops, so we flooded the place with weapons and advisors.
Yes.
We gave them all kinds of things like shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles and all kinds of things that, it doesn't even compare to giving a little money to each one that kills American. But, as you say, it's probably not true anyway.
Well, again, like I said, the way it's being handled by the corporate media and by Trump's enemies, where it is just a declared fact that nobody should question. That reminds me too much of Saddam's nuclear weapons, and that's why I'm very suspicious about what's going on.
It was okay for us to do it when they were in Afghanistan, but not okay for them to give any money to the
time. Our covert operations are good and their covert operations are bad.
Exactly. Let me ask you something else. Friday you said something about you were looking for something you wrote on Google and it was erased. It was destroyed because they were afraid that people would realize that Jesus' offspring were the Palestinians. And
the article still exists. Google couldn't erase it because it's on my server, but they won't show it in the search results. Anyway, stay on the line, Terry. We've got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Terry in California. And Terry, did you have anything else to share with us?
No, just one last comment. I think they were afraid that maybe the Zionist Christians would read some of your stuff and maybe have second thoughts about supporting Israel. Anyway, that's all I got, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was going to weigh in a little bit, if I could, on the Russian bounties on U.S. troops thing.
Yes.
And aside from it being really complete horse crap.
Yes.
But listen, it's so transparent. It's hard. They have to. They can never truly let there's about to be that report coming out by that Durham or whatever report, and so it resurrects Russia Gate one more time.
Yes.
It gets them in ill favor one more time. It feeds the war agenda. It makes them seem less the liar. I mean, the Russians are bad. Maybe we weren't quite so bad right about the first time, but we were right that they were bad. I mean, it's just so it's ridiculous. And the fact that the Democrats and the press are piling in on this, and to some extent, you can see the intelligence agencies are. They're not.
Oh yeah,
not
there's no question.
Yeah, but why? Because they were participants in Russiagate. Couldn't have happened without them. So there's, it's just, it's clearly crap, and it's emblematic. It's a great test case of exactly how American politics and American agenda-driven media goes nowadays.
Yeah, it is a good example. The thing is, it's also very heavy-handed and obvious, at least to me, and maybe that's my cynicism coming on out. But the instant I saw the article in the Times on Friday, and I said, no, there's something, it doesn't pass the smell test.
Yeah, well, Mike, you've got a pretty, your nose is pretty attuned to that. I mean, let's face it, as are most of the, because of you, a lot of ways, a lot of the listeners. But it's becoming pretty obvious to everybody now.
Yes.
And it's just the fact that in my own household, they still believe Russiagate. My wife is so polemic that she believes that whole thing. All she does is listen to Rachel Maddow, and you know what? If you listen to Rachel Maddow, that's all you're going to know.
Yep.
So it is what it is. But anybody with any sense at all, would know that it's just crap.
It really is.
But,
all right. Well, listen, Peter. Do you want to be held over?
Yeah, if I could. I just want to.
All right. Stay on the line here. We're going to put you on hold for station identification, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're talking with Peter in L.A. Peter, you had more you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody where our entire foreign policy press, it's driven by a press that is that's to a very large extent is written to further the interests of a country other than our own, and our Congress is paid off by a bunch of fifth columnists who are paying them to act in the interests of a country that's not our own and against the interests of American citizens. I mean, everything from allowing open borders and allowing the demographics of this country to be changed so completely that we're in danger of becoming like the South Africans, to war after war after war. They're about to annex yet and steal more land.
Yes.
They demonize us for that. I'm glad to see that you covered Judah Benjamin, Benjamin, who was the Secretary of the Treasury, by the way, for isn't it interesting? Secretary of the Treasury for the Confederacy too. Always the Treasury, and was called the brains of the South. And there's monuments to him in Charleston. There's monuments to him in Virginia. There's monuments to him in New Orleans. And he was a slaveholder with 175 slaves. And of course, I've read that as many as 75% of all the Jews who lived in the Confederacy, 75% of all the population of Jews who lived in the Confederacy were slaveholders. Of course, they bankrolled the entire slave trade with the Rothschilds and Warburgs and all those people, but yet never touched. And again, why is that? Because the same people are financing Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
They're financing who now have more money in their coffers than the Republicans or the Democrats. Did you know that?
Yes.
They've got more money in their war chest than the Democrats or the Republicans. And Antifa, of course, all financed the same guys who financed Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Their main contributor was Soros. There are others, but Soros is certainly the most obvious. But how can we possibly put up with this divisive, corrosive people who have nobody's interest, least of all the countries, at heart, except their own, and yet that's where we are. And that's really all I had to say. I mean, it's so complete. And what this whole thing with the Russian bounties, of course, that's being trumpeted by the press as well, because hey, listen, RussiaGate was also the press, and the banks were behind. Were behind that owned the press, or were behind trumpeting that up as well. So I mean, it's hard to think of a subject that doesn't come back to this.
Yes.
Whatever. I mean, it's overwhelmingly, it really overwhelms the American political system and cultural landscape, and yet nobody's allowed to talk about it.
No, nobody's
Thank
allowed
God
to
for
talk
you.
about it at all.
Yeah, thank God for you, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the kind words there. Interestingly enough, there's an article that just appeared in the foreword saying it's time to start taking down the statues of anti-Semites, which I would presume would include people like Henry Ford, who did not get along well with that part of our society.
Go to war with their enemies. Their enemies are the country's enemies.
Yes.
And they are the country. For all intents and purposes, they're like your old analogy of Master Blaster.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes.
The character in the Mel Gibson, Road Warrior
Thunderdome.
thing.
Thunderdome.
Underdome. Yeah. The guy, the idiot, the giant idiot with the cunning little dwarf on top of him.
Yes.
Well, that's exactly how our country goes. So, and that giant idiot with the dwarf on top would beat the giant would beat himself to death, and if the dwarf directed it, and that's what the dwarf is directing right now to our body politics. So, anyways, that's it for me, Mike. Thanks for letting me rant.
Well, no problem. It was a good rant. We're going to let you go now. The phone lines are completely open, 800-313-9443. And I just found out to my delight that starting tomorrow, Indiana is waiving the fees on their gun permits. So I'm going to go down and get myself legal for, they have a special permit just for target shooters. And so I'm going to get myself one of those. Start hurling some lead somewhere. I can't wait till the weekend. Fireworks. We got fireworks out here. I just hope it isn't raining. All righty. So let's see. Story coming out of more comments about the New York Times. And by the way, if you look at the New York Times article from last Friday, totally anonymous sources, absolutely no corroboration whatsoever. It's just another Russia did it story, Russia's, anonymous intel sources. And of course, the big argument is, did Trump know or not know? And the idea coming from Trump's opponents, and the Democrats and the corporate media is, well, he should have known. And the fact that he didn't know represents a failure on his part, or if he did know and did nothing, that's a failure on his part. It's just more Trump bashing, more Russia bashing. Now, according to the White House statement, this story never appeared in the presidential daily briefing because there are very high standards that must be met for anything to be in the presidential daily briefing. For one thing, all the intelligence agencies have to agree. And apparently there was some dissent out there saying that, no, we're not really sure. And let's be very honest, bad things happen in war. And it wouldn't be the first time that bounties were being offered for the enemy. I remember there was a campground up by Lake Arrowhead in Southern California that I used to frequent. And in the large rocks, there are these grinding bowls that were used to grind corn into corn flour to make bread with. And they're a remnant of a tribe called the Serrano, which means peaceful Indian. We don't know what they call themselves because the city of San Bernardino put a bounty on them. Literally. If you brought in their 2 ears, you got $75. So it does happen. Okay, let's see. We have a caller on the line, Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, Mike. Well, for once, I'm going to speak about something else, but this stupid coronavirus. Okay.
Yes.
This is, again, something they're trying to push, and us, again, they're trying to peddle to us. This is the Russia virus, I guess you could say. I mean, these people are so disgusting. Do they really believe everything they're going to lie to us about? But I'll tell you what's behind a lot of this garbage, Mike. A lot of the so-called left, not the real populist left, that's basically also being kicked off of YouTube and kicked off of Twitter and all that. But it's the actual so-called, I don't know, they actually have the nerve to call themselves the resistance or anything but the resistance. They're the establishment. Okay, a lot of them, just like the neocons on the Republican side, are neoliberals, Democratic side. A lot of people don't realize. Well, I think more people are starting to realize now that basically what the neolibs and the neocons are Trotskyites.
Yes.
They go back to Trotsky. Trotsky was what during the Russian Revolution was probably the most brutal of the communist leaders. His philosophy was continuous revolution, and he wanted to continue and start using the Red Army a lot like the Trotskyites today in our country want to use the U.S. Army to push more and more of his version of communism on the rest of the world, basically starting, I guess, with Europe. And Stalin, for all his faults, Stalin was a nationalist. He didn't want to push it beyond the Soviet border at the time. Okay, he wanted just to, he wanted, to improve Russia. He wanted to bring it into the 20th century, which, by the way, he did in the beginning. He actually, a lot of people don't know that he actually outlawed abortion and actually rewarded Russian families for having a lot of kids.
Yes.
It was one of the awards of the Soviet Union. I didn't know this until recently. I'm finding more and more out because, the internet is so, it's so expansive. And if you really want to find stuff out, you can find stuff out. And what happened is Trotsky, of course, didn't go along with this. So Stalin knew he had to get rid of him, and he finally got him out of the country and then rubbed him out in 1940. He got him rubbed out in Mexico City. These people, these Trotskyites have never forgiven him for that. And I'll tell you something else about Trotsky. Like a lot of these neoliberals and neocons today, he was supported by the big banksters of the time, including Jacob Schiff, who was considered a Rothschild agent at the time. Schiff actually put Trotsky up in an apartment in, I believe, in the Bronx, in New York City when he was living in New York City, and helped fund bringing Trotsky back into Russia, at the time was the Soviet Union yet, to push his revolution.
Okay.
This is so. In other words, again, what's happening today is the people who are, I don't know whether they're grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, or what, of these Trotskyites are now pushing their agenda. One of them is, of course, Schiff. I believe that Schiff there in California, I believe that clown is probably related to Jacob Schiff. I've been trying to find out. I'm looking it up. It's hard to find out. There's some people say he is, some people that say he isn't. The other one, of course, is Bill Kristol. His
Yes.
father was a big-time Trotskyite. And that's what I think is one of the hostilities. The other hostility towards Russia is Russia today is a very religious nation, a really Christian nation, but an Orthodox Christian. In other words, they're a lot different than the born-again fools that believe that Zionism is the way to go, that, we need all the Jews to move to Israel and then Armageddon starts. That's not what the Orthodox Christians believe, the Eastern Orthodox.
Yes.
And it's, of course, part of the division between Eastern Orthodoxy and originally the Catholic Church, and now, of course, part of the rest of the church, that, whether the Mormons or whoever else. That's another part of the problem. And the other thing is the Anglo-Saxon. The Anglo-Saxon, of course, and I would include the Germans, have long looked at Russia as an enemy. You had the Crimean War sometime in the 1800s with Britain and Russia. And actually, Russia interfered with Britain and the Civil War in the United States on the side of the South. But at the same time, if you look at World War II, Patton wanted to go right into the Soviet Union after
Yes, he did.
with Nazi Germany. And he gave this thing about these Mongols. He called them Mongols. These not only call them commies, but you also call them Mongols. And it's another problem. We think of the Russians, I mean, I don't think of them, but others think of the Russians as, oh, they're not really even European, they're really Asian. So what if they are? But I'm saying this is a lot of the thinking that went on and still goes on. So that's another part of the problem. They want to make an enemy out of a great nation. And it's so stupid because I'll tell you something. If we started a war with them on the European continent, especially there in Eastern Europe, I would probably have more of a chance stepping into the ring with, I don't know, Colin McGregor than the U.S. and Europe would have against Russia in that area. Okay, they'd be overrun so quick because the Russians are preparing for this. Since World War II, they are prepared to defend their country. And defending their country would mean they would push NATO out of Eastern Europe so fast, they'd look like jackrabbits running, okay? I wouldn't want to see this because I don't want to see a lot of people killed, especially our people, and a lot of those dead soldiers would be our soldiers, and I don't want to see that. But this is what these clowns are trying to push. These are what these Trotskyites and other warmongers are trying to push, and there's no reason for it. Thank God Putin is a level-headed guy. I believe the greatest statesman in the world today, and he's so far used restraint and continues to use restraint and tries to talk sense. People that just don't seem to be able to talk sense, maybe because they're on psych meds, I don't know. You know, it's hard to say with the so-called leaders of our country and Britain, for that matter, who are actually, I believe, seriously mentally ill. Because even during the Cold War, people understood what a war between the United States and Russia would be. And I said, yes, we'd be defeated very quickly in a land war, in a conventional war. If it goes anything after conventional war, there'd be no winner. We'd all lose. The planet would lose because there's no way we could survive something like that. You know, I've heard already that even if India and Pakistan go at it with nukes, the world would be in very serious trouble. Okay, from the effects of the radiation and the what do you call it, nuclear winter. So imagine a nuclear exchange between the U.S., Russia, and probably China would be involved, and who knows who else might be involved. So that's, you know, I don't know what you think about it, Mike, but I really think people got to wise up and understand. You know, it's bad enough what these clowns are doing to us with this phony virus and their phony germs and whatever else they're putting now, having us walking around with these stupid masks and stuff like that. That's bad enough. But now they again, an oldie, but now they got to go start up with Russia again. Or, you know, and they're starting to go with China also. They're going to kill us. They will.
I think the obsession with Russia and China is to give the American people a new enemy to hate, so we're not paying attention to the countries we're already at war in. I mean, they're talking about pulling out of Afghanistan. We're pulling out of Syria. We basically lost. I've even heard one article in the corporate media saying, yes, we lost in Syria. And I think that's what we're being distracted from. So they're going to demonize China. Ooh, hate the Chinese. They're going to demonize Russia. Ooh, hate the Russians. Those gosh darn Russians, we're going to, you know, take care of them and give them what for. And what they're trying to do, though, is trade the hot wars for cold wars.
Yeah, that's true. But, Mike, I kind of disagree with you there. We didn't lose in Syria. You know who lost? The globalists and the Zionists, the neocons, the neo-libs. They're the ones who lost. American people didn't lose anything. Okay? Thank God Assad stayed in power. It's another great man I really like, you know? I just hope somebody can convince Trump to get the heck out of there completely.
Yes.
Stop trying to steal these people's oil, you know? And I don't look at Iran as an enemy either. I don't look at any of these countries as an enemy. Enemy is right here, Mike.
Yep.
Enemy is right here in this country. And it's these globalist, neocon, Ziocon, and neoliberals. They're the enemy of this country. And, of course, the Bill Gates type, you know, the technocrats. These, you know, that's the enemy. As soon as we wake up, Mike, maybe we can still save this country. And maybe save the planet, too, because the planet's not going to survive a nuclear war either. All right, Mike. Thanks. Appreciate it. Nice talking.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and we're going to start with Tom in Florida. Tom, I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind? Tom, are you there?
Lost him.
We lost him. All right. Let's go to Jack in Massachusetts. Hello, Jack. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hi, Mike.
Yes.
Many-year listener, first-time caller.
Yes.
I wanted to, first of all, welcome you to the mainland.
Yes.
And I want to compliment you on your RBN spot. Caused me to kick in some few bucks.
Thank you.
I've been listening to it. But anyway, this business with YouTube killing Stephen Monnier, or I'm not sure of the pronunciation, it's kind of upsetting because I've listened to it for a long time, many, many years. And it's just what occurred to me, and I know you have the technical savvy to understand what I'm talking about, is that, and even yourself and RBN and everybody else, I mean, we're so dependent upon this www.whatever domain name services for routing our traffic. I think we really need to get back to a much more of a basic technological relationship with this thing that's called the internet. And I think that people, we need to go back to an IP. In other words, it ought to be like your phone. In other words, if I decide to call you on your telephone, your, whatever extension, area code, extension, whatever, and they start blocking that.
Jack, I got to put you on hold. I'm going to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We'll be right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to our show here. And a reminder that Republic Broadcasting is in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser. We need your help to keep on doing what we're doing. We don't get huge amounts of grant money from various shadowy non-governmental organizations. We rely on advertising revenues and your support to keep on speaking truth to power. So the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Now we're going to go back to Jack in Massachusetts. We were talking about YouTube censorship and all the people being shut down under accusations that they're white supremacists. And part of the problem I have with it is there really isn't a definition of what a white supremacist is other than anybody who opposes anything that non-whites say.
Well, I agree. The topical aspects of censorship, be it whatever, white supremacist, second right, whatever it is. But my problem is this addiction, this dependency upon the YouTube.com function as a resource that the internet is if we're to believe what they say, the internet is a technological data exchange system using. I go back. I mean, I'm before computers ever existed. So I've been kind of with the whole thing ever since it all evolved. And this whole domain name system is like, oh, hell, I mean, if it's not republicbroadcasting.org, it doesn't exist. But the domain name system is really a function of the, the browser technology that just runs through, takes that nomenclature of whatever.com and just reroutes it. And I just think it's time for people to understand is that there's an underlying technology here.
Yes.
That must not be forgotten or brushed away. That I'm sure you do too. We go back to the old bulletin board systems.
Well, I remember using it fondly. I really do. The problem is right now in an age of what are called virtual domain servers, you have to have the domain naming system because you'll have a single server with a single IP hosting 10, 20, 30 different web pages. And that name has to be there.
I agree, the server, but that's where the new IP v6, I think, is going to come into play. I think IP, we're all under IP4, the four little three number digits separated by dots and whatnot. But IP v6 will expand that functionality, and then of course, God only knows what G4 is all going to do and whatever. But I like the old fashioned. I'm a cable, Cat 5 kind of guy. I like taking my computer, plug it into a switch, into a router, or whatever, and it's going through a line. Agreed. You know, we got the Xfinities, the Comcast, the Cox, and they're all in between you and me. Which is, hey, I would argue is that, hey, I want the people of the world to know is that this communication technology is really about a semiconductor that's turning off and on at 1 billion times a second. Okay, when you're right down to the network technology layer. And that is, you know, then you get, well, who owns the switch, who owns the fiber, who owns all the, well, you know, I really feel that it's, that for us as people and as a civilization, regardless of where we are in this world, is that here is a technology, and it's called semiconductor switch.
Yes.
And I just saw something in the news today that the government, Trump or whomever, wants to reinvest in semiconductor technology in the United States, which I say is 1,000%. We got to do this. We can't, because, you know, you open up your computer and there are all these chips and they're all China.
Yes.
Well, you know, we got to get back to our tool and die technology. That's what made ourselves great. Not all this, you know, servicing and passing papers back and forth. We have to really reclaim our understanding of tools and technology. That's why, of course, you got to look at Elon Musk. Look what he's done. You know, that's just incredible. Here's just one guy. Granted, he had some money with PayPal and all that, but still, look at what this one guy did and he had a few bucks. Well, how many of us are behind have the same capability, the same potential? You know, there's a lot going to happen, I think, out of this whole hysteria that's kind of gripping the planet right now. And I would encourage people to go. But let's go back to our, you know, the roots. What made us great, the tools and the dies, the machines, and granted, it's the machine we're using now. I'm talking to you on a cell phone. It's a little thing that flips out.
All right. Well, Jack, you raised some very good points.
Mike. Thanks for your show. Thanks for
Thank you. All right. We'll be back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones to Tom in Florida. Tom, welcome back to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, good day, Michael. I'm sorry about the drop call. I don't have. Yeah, and get back to Peter was great. Peter the Great had he wasn't ranting, but he did say something about Rachel Mad Cow. She looks like a Charlie horse to me. I saw her for. I had to watch her reply to Biden's speech today, Michael, after 89 days. It was absolutely ridiculous. The whole thing is about COVID and Trump's at fault. Trump's this and Trump's that. This guy Biden's a bumbling moron with a 98-year-old brain or 99-year-old brain. If this guy got elected, the country would fall apart in 3 months. It'd be over. 90 days, the whole country would be in total upheaval. It'd be chaos. This bumbling moron Biden, it looks like he's going to pick this Kamala Harris as his running mate. The one that said he's on Miami here. She said the first debate that she said he's a bumbling moron. I mean, this is how this is going to go down. It looks like it's going to be Biden and Kamala, the chameleon, for his VP. And he's going to pick 2 black Supreme Court women justices if he wins. He's going to get 2 women on the Supreme Court that are black. Go figure. So anyway, Michael, here's what I want to talk about also. They had Michael Reagan on today, Ronald Reagan's son, and he had some figures that he was throwing out. I never seen him get so highly upset. The blacks make up 9%, and Peter probably knows this. They make up 9% of the population, but they they commit 54% of the violent crimes over there.
Yes.
Murders and every other crime. Every crime you can think of in California. You're 9% of that state's population committing 54% of the crime. And the other is Hispanic, and the whites only commit 13% of the crimes in California. So go figure that, Michael, as a microcosm for things to come. And let's get back to the real thing here, Michael. Do you honestly think that you think that we would have won World War II if we didn't have a Great Depression? I don't think so. I remember my dad told me a story when he was a young man. He was in 1928. And he told me that because of the men had to stand the soup lines and get crackers and tomato soup to eat, that they made them tough as nails. You think if we had to fight a guy like Hitler today in this turmoil that we're in, we could win a war like that? The men of the Great Generation, they were tough as nails because they had to go through a Great Depression. And the men back then, Michael, even in turn of the century. That was, you know what's going on with our culture, Michael. The white Anglo Caucasians used to be the pioneers. Now we've become the pussies.
Yes.
We've become a pussy culture. We were the pioneer culture, and now we're the pussy culture. I figured it all out. The ones that made this the greatest nation on the earth that ever saw, because of pioneering spirit, we have become now a bunch of discombobulated, run-zog pussies. It's unbelievable what's happened here, Michael. I hate to say it, but that's just the truth. It really is the truth. And I'm going to carpet bomb it like that because we have allowed the asphalt to tell the gasoline what to do, and it's got to stop right now. When they talk about these southern monuments, listen, the South never lost the Civil War. All they did is go back to their lands in the South, and the Northern Yankees went back to their land after Andersonville and all that. They went back to the North. So nothing was really resolved. What, Washington, D.C. got resolved? Lincoln got assassinated. So what got resolved? The Southerners still went back south, and they took their lands back, and the Northerners went back to their land. Yeah,
well, actually, Tom, if you study the Constitution and all the amendments that were passed immediately following the Civil War, you'll see which side really won.
I agree. And you know, when I see these imbeciles, and you know, Michael, the two guys that were trying to take down the Andrew Jackson monument right across from the White House, did you know they were both Jewish?
No, I did not.
Got two Jews trying to take down the Andrew Jackson monument. No, go figure, Michael. Go figure that one out. Well, you know, hearing Ronald Reagan's son, Michael Reagan, giving out these figures, I'm like saying, wow, there's only maybe two networks will do that. You think any of these left Zionist media networks will ever say that about the 9% of the California population or 13% nationwide? And you got that bumbling imbecile Biden. This guy, you know what, Michael, I'll tell you the truth. He won't be a president. He wouldn't last 1 year. Then Kamala Harris would kick him right out, and she'll take the reins of power. You want to make a bet? God forbid that happens. God forbid. And, you know, I got to say something. You had a couple callers who were wonderful yesterday, and they were pointing out our buddy in New Jersey. You know, he used to say the media is all this and that. Now all of a sudden the media is great about the mask. He sounded like, it was like Dustin giving a speech with Joe Biden today. He was like the speechwriter for Joe Biden. I mean, this guy Biden wants you to wear a mask basically 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
but he didn't have a mask when he gave his speech, spilling germs all over the place. This idiot Biden, you got this Biden bumbling moron speaking. He don't know what he's saying. I mean, it's unbelievable. This guy he drops words left and right. It's unrelenting what this imbecile is going to do to our country if he got in there. What is insanity? And we don't hear nothing about Hunter Biden, all the millions of bucks he ripped off. He had got three different women pregnant over a 5-year period. I mean, the disgust and the disgrace of these demon rats. That Nancy Pelosi. If you ever notice, Michael, I watch her videos. You know that every time I see Pelosi, she puts a scarf around her neck. You notice that?
I noticed that.
Because she don't want to show her real true age with her double her chin. She's already spent $800,000 on facelift. They had it on one of these news sites I saw. 800. Most men don't make 800. A lot of guys don't ever make $800,000 in their life.
Yes.
She put it all in her face and her buttocks and all that. I mean, it's just unbelievable what's going on in this country, and the hypocritical crap that comes out of that Maxine Waters and this bumbling Pelosi. It's unbelievable. And oh, by the way, Louis Farrakhan can get away with saying all this spew about Zog, but if David Dukes or some white nationalist does that, he's a big-time Nazi and all that. It's disgusting. Look what's going on at Mount Rushmore now, Michael.
Yes.
They had the governor on last night. The beautiful governor of Dakota was on last night when Laura Bream, Laura Ingle, and she was saying, we're going to have a big party this 4th of July at the Mount Rushmore Monument. And if you don't like it, if you want to call us white nationalists, go right ahead. Those were all white men. And guess what? That's our culture. You don't like it, we're the majority. Kiss it. Because we are the majority. We're not the minority. We're not the minority in this group, the white Caucasians. We are the majority. We need to take the reins back of our country. We got to stop this crap, letting the asphalt tell the gasoline what to do. No more. It's got to come to a screeching halt right now, Trump. Right now. And all these sanctuary cities, like me and you have been talking, Michael, for a year. Donald Trump, if he showed me anything, I wanted him to go see arrest those mayors and those governors right now in those sanctuary states. Where they have sanctuary cities that are breaking all kinds of federal laws.
I have been waiting for that to happen for a very, very long time. I mean, the fact is we already have laws on the books regarding all of this stuff. What we're lacking is enforcement, and that is the task of the executive branch.
Well, you know what? If Trump doesn't do something from here in the next 90 days, if he don't do something about arresting these sanctuary city mayors and these governors, I believe Trump's in trouble, Michael. He's got to show the American public he's not playing no more with none of this illegal immigration of our country. Oh, by the way, they put the Molly Tibbetts case back till 2021. You know why? When coronavirus came out with these Chinese, they didn't want that Jesse Smollett case coming out, and they didn't want Molly Tibbetts case to come out. The media was so afraid of those two cases, Trump would have won in a massive landslide. But since they kept this quiet now, they pushed her trial back to 21, and if you notice, the Jesse Smollett case is completely shut off, Michael. Completely shut down. And he's guilty of sin. Guilty of sin. And by the way, this guy, George Pink Floyd, guess what, Michael? He had my friend was telling me the fentanyl that he had in that bag was enough to kill 2,000 men. Remember, he got out of the cop car before they put the neck on the knee. He said he couldn't breathe. Well, he couldn't breathe because he was taking fentanyl, man. They turned that into all kinds of other drugs, that fentanyl, I found out. They have all kinds of different drugs that are cut with that on the streets, and all these people are dying.
Yes.
Who's kidding who here? And you know what, Michael? One thing I want you to talk about, maybe on your maybe tomorrow show. Who's George Floyd's white girlfriend? What does she have? What does she know about the drug dealing that was going on maybe between Chauvin and Floyd? She's a blonde-haired. I don't know if she's a mulatto or what. She looks white. Have you seen a picture of Floyd's girlfriend in Minnesota?
I caught one once, and yeah, she's fairly light-skinned.
What does she know about this drug dealing that Floyd was doing, and who knows what's going on with him?
We're not going to find out because, with all of these cases that are being politicized, there is a wall built around them where whatever's really going on, we'll never find out. All we get is the propaganda and the spin. I mean, look at the Seth Rich case, and then we find out he was actually still alive at the hospital.
Yep. Unbelievable. Oh, by the way, they took Washington statue down, I heard today in New York.
Well, I'm sorry to see that happen. I'm sorry to see that happen. Anyway, listen, Tom, I got to let you go. We got a bunch of callers, and we're running out of time on the show, okay?
Thank you. God bless. Have a great show.
All right, thanks. We're going to switch over to Mitchell in Memphis. Hello, Mitchell. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
What's up, Mike? What's going on? Listen, Mike, I wanted to ask you something. If I were to go into the street and just start arbitrarily asking some people, is taxation theft and or extortion? The average person in the United States would probably say, no, because we get something for it, right?
Really, what do we get for it?
That would probably be the majority. Excuse me?
Yeah, what do we get for it? Wars, propaganda, spin.
You're stealing my thunder, Mike.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, most people would say that we're supposed to get something for it. Now, I'm going to read something here. It says, what is the basic meaning of the social contract theory? Social contract theory, nearly as old as philosophy itself, is the view that persons' moral and or political obligations are dependent upon a contract or agreement among them to form the society in which they live. So this is this ideology, and no one signed anything, mind you, but this is this ideology that we have an allegiance or we obey the laws and we pay the taxes. In return, we get the protection and services of the government. I'm going to move over here to, I think it's Webster's Dictionary. I'm going to read the definition of the word citizen.
Okay.
Inhabitant of a city or a town, especially one entitled to the rights and privileges of a free man. Let's go down to definition 2B. It says, a native or naturalized person who owes allegiance to a government and is entitled to protection from it. Mike, is it possible for that definition of citizen to be satisfied? Is it being satisfied? Or are we getting the
probably
from the government that we're entitled to? Because we pay the taxes and obey the laws.
Well, looking at the streets of America right now, I'd say that no, they can't keep that part of the contract.
Right. So if the contract is been breached by the government and is now rendered null and void, that would mean that this definition of citizen cannot be satisfied. So to Tom, who just called, Tom, tomorrow when you call, answer the question. I know your concerns about people who are not citizens and such, and I'm not going to argue that with you. I want you, Tom, to tell me if you're a citizen. Is anybody a citizen? Given the fact that the social contract has been breached and violated many times over, is it even possible for anybody to be a citizen? But the thing is, Mike, moving on from that, moving to coronavirus, so it seems to me that it was incumbent upon the government to provide protection.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of the healthcare system as infrastructure,
Yes.
they weren't ready. They weren't ready, and you can't say that it was some sort of nescience or something that we had no idea that there's no, because we have known about Black Plague, Spanish flu, Asian flu, HIV, AIDS, swine flu, Ebola, on all of these. So we knew that this potentiality existed, and they didn't have the hospital system ready. That was failure of the social contract right there.
Yes.
And that was a quarter of a year ago, and so they weren't ready. And so now here it is, a quarter year later. Well, back then, 3 months ago, they said, well, because, what was it? Neil Ferguson came out and said that's where that new language came from, the spike and flatten the curve and social distancing. It's because the system wasn't ready. We paid our taxes, and they didn't have the hospitals ready. By the way,
no, because all the money goes to the war machine.
Exactly. Well, but you're right, Mike. I've got it right here. Military, let's see, a C-17A Globemaster $328 million per. F-22 Raptor, $350 million per. P-8 Poseidon, $290. Here's the big one, B-2 Spirit, $2.4 billion per.
Yes.
And you're telling me that the government couldn't have mothballed hospitals at the ready? I mean, the Mercy and Comfort have sailed back to, guess where? The Navy. But the point is, why don't they have ships like that at the ready all the time? And people would say, well, Mitch, that would cost billions of dollars. Well, what is this costing not having the hospitals ready? Trillions. But here it is, a quarter of a year later, and they're still not ready. It was never about the concern, Mike. See, it's always about changing the focus. They always change the focus. The concern 3 months ago was, well, we got to flatten the curve. We don't want to overwhelm the hospitals. The hospital shouldn't have been so fragile to begin with. But here, a quarter of a year later, they're still saying people are getting infected, and it could overwhelm the hospital. Why? We should be ready. Where are all the graphs showing us on a county by county basis the readiness and preparedness of each county in regards to the hospitals? And it's very interesting. You can go on Google Maps and you can see 20 to 30 abandoned insane asylums that could have been repurposed, could have been kept at the ready, could have been mothballed, like they mothball battleships. Every city has army depots where you got millions and millions of dollars of military hardware at the ready, just in case. This really aggravates me that we should have the hospitals ready. I'll tell you something very interesting, Mike. Remember a name that most people remember, and this is rich with irony. What was the name? Typhoid Mary.
Yes.
Typhoid Mary was once a resident at a hospital, I think, called Riverside Hospital, right there on that little island called the North Brother Island, right on the East River there in Manhattan, across from Rikers, and of course north of South Brother Island. But North Brother Island was decommissioned and shut down. It's now a ruin.
Yeah.
And the government has basically determined, designated it a bird sanctuary. It's all these ruined buildings that could have been usable. It could have continued on as a quarantine hospital, or like what we're dealing with right now. But the interesting thing is they said no humans are allowed on North Brother Island. Now, some of the young kids, the urban speedunkers, go out and they get video, so you can see the broken down, ruined. It's kind of interesting and artsy and so on and so forth.
I think they showed that on Mysteries of the Abandoned.
What now? Oh, they may have.
Yeah.
But you understand understand the irony of this, Mike? That you've got, the government says humans can't go on this what was once a quarantine island, and now we need these kind of facilities right now, and they won't get us ready. They won't get they're basically saying we're not going to spend any money. We're supposed to, per the social contract ideology, blah blah blah. We're supposed to be spending things and protecting the people. We're supposed to be doing these things, providing services, defense, and so forth. That's what they're supposed to be. They're taking the tax dollars. We're supposed to be obeying the laws or we will be punished. But they're not ready. And here it is, third of a year later, they're not ready. And what's happening? They're saying, you people can go out and just lose your business. We'll bear the brunt of it. This is insane. I'll say it again, like the Declaration of Independence, it says twice, it's time to abolish the government and start over. Everything Tom's talking about, a lot of what he's talking about is the government doesn't work. So, Tom, that's my
Mitchell,
sir.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're running out of time and we've got other callers, so I need to let you go. Thank you very much, and we're going to switch over to Daniel in British Columbia. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Mike. I just wanted to reiterate a phone call I did months ago, and I speculated that the U.S. police officers were trained in Israel because I heard this years prior.
Yes.
There's an actual June 1st, 2020 article from morningstaronline.co.uk. And it talks about hundreds of police officers from Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, California, Arizona, Connecticut, New York, the entire eastern seaboard, were trained by Israeli forces coming to the United States, some of them taxpayer funded, and some of them were funded by the Anti-Defamation League.
Yes.
And the American Jewish Committee's Project, Interchange, and the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs. So they all paid for this. And also they had police chiefs and assistant chiefs and captains train in Israel. These junkets were also paid by the ADL. So my question is why this never really got any traction at all. I mean, I kind of answered my own question because the media is controlled by the same people.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I tried to raise a stink about it a few years back, and of course I got the usual, you're just being an anti-Semite, Israel's got the best security in the world, and we should want the same thing here. Well, only if we want to be treated like Palestinians.
That was my next point, because since 2002 this has been happening, and my biggest question is why would Israel care train U.S. police officers? And I have to go back to when Urban Moving Systems van was pulled over in New Jersey, and they got arrested. They were dressed as Arabs.
Yes.
They caught explosives in their van. They said to the police officers, we're not your problems. The Palestinians are your problems.
Yes.
So I'm trying to make this connection where, Israel kind of thinks that we need protection from all these, the booga booga terrorists. Meanwhile, they're the ones pulling these false flags all over.
Yes.
And this latest thing with George Floyd, just, the whole thing seemed sort of scripted and so forth. We'll never be able to really prove it. Even if you could, just like Sandy Hook, no one's going to believe you, and it just gets buried. They're censoring people like Stefan Molyneux and others, and it's just more of the same. So I think, RBN is a shining beacon out there. I think any of your new listeners or any of your new callers, they should be, giving a donation to RBN and what really happened. And let's try and keep this censorship-free platform open. And I'll leave you to get on with your other callers. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot here. And we're going to switch over to Mark in Florida. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to comment, thanks for letting me in, that the people need to read Louis T. McFadden's speech of in June 10th, 1932, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
That explains it all. People read that speech That's what's tearing up our country. It's the Federal Reserve System. We are slaves to the banks, and the banks are seizing every bit of property. They're shutting down every individual business, so we have to go to the big conglomerates.
Yes.
We're going to lose our land. We're going to lose everything. It's the Federal Reserve System. It's killing us, and it's going worldwide. That's why the whole world's in this mess, this lie of COVID lie. Why haven't we been wearing masks for the last 100 years? Because there's a flu. This is ridiculous. They're stealing our stuff. Read McFadden's speech. Get educated and vote them all out. Vote everyone out, from the dog catcher all the way up. A whole new crew. It'll take them at least 2 years to learn how to lie, cheat, and steal. Vote them all out.
Oh, I imagine that's an inborn talent for that class of people here. All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. We're running short on time. Let's go to Dustin in New Jersey. Hello, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
It only takes 6 weeks to lie, cheat, and steal. Ask that Republican woman who, remember?
Yes.
The one who was involved in that with the 4 guys, including the intelligence guy with the Republican. I forgot. There was 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, but they're all involved with the corruption and the insider trading. Remember that? She was only in for 6 weeks, though. It's 6 weeks, maybe less. Mike, all right, Tom, the white people are a minority. I'm white, and I'm going to say that. We're in a minority, dude. Number 2, those jobs ain't coming back. The manufacturing's not coming back, guys. You gave up that to be a service economy. When you do that, your manufacturing's not coming back. The country with the manufacturing will have the innovation for the future. And I said it before, that's China. Number 3, the aircraft carriers. You know why we have so many aircraft carriers and destroyers, frigates, is because we are an empire, and aircraft carriers are a forced projection.
Yes.
Hospital ships are not. We care more abroad than within. That's why we're rotting infrastructure. No hospitals, nothing ready. And then, Mike, before I get off the phone, that website, that tells you the rate of transmission for coronavirus. Anybody can go on and look on the internet for that R0 transmission, and Florida is 1.5%. Mike, have a good night.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We need your help to stay on the air. Keep doing what we're doing here. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.